Hello and welcome to our next event. Thank you for standing in line, for sweating. Rick and I very much appreciate it. We're looking forward to this. My name is Chrissy Brown, and I am the Administrative Director of the Nantucket Book Foundation. Before we begin, I'd like the opportunity I'd love the opportunity to thank our top donors, Richie Battle, Randy and Lisa Cohn, Ellen and Linwood Dame, Elizabeth Galvin, Mary and Robert Haft, Adam and Ramona Nee, Nancy Seaman and Alan Schwartz, Beth Wilkinson and David Gregory, and our top donors, the White Elephant and the Boston Globe. Please take a minute to silence your cell phone, and remember there is a book signing and sale right outside the church immediately following our discussion. Today, I have the honor of speaking with our next guest, Richard Russo. Richard is the author of 10 novels. We're not going to get through this.
Thank you.
He's the author of 10 novels, including Chances Are, Everybody's Fool, and That Old Cape Magic, 2 collections of stories, 2 essay collections about writing, The Destiny Thief and Life and Art, and the memoir Elsewhere. In 2002, he received the Pulitzer Prize for his novel Empire Falls, which, like Nobody's Fool, won multiple awards for screen adaptations. And in 2023, his novel Straight Man was adapted into the television series Lucky Hank. Richard's forthcoming novel, Under the Falls, is scheduled to be published this August. Please join me in welcoming my friend, Rick Russo.
Thank you. Thank you. This is very humbling. Thank you all so much for coming. We've really been looking forward to this, and we'll have some fun.
Hopefully. I have to ask to start, how many interviews have you had between Oprah Winfrey and me?
I don't think there's been another one.
No. Well, let's have some fun. To start, I'd love to go back in time a bit. Empire Falls is celebrating its 25th anniversary in print. And yes, if you haven't read it, please go out and buy it. Rick will sign it for you. He won the Pulitzer Prize for this novel. I came upon this book a little later in life than I would have hoped. And the moment I put it down, I just was thrown sideways. I called my mother, who's in the audience today, and I said, "Mom, have you read Empire Falls?" And she said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Yes, where have you been?" Can you just talk in your own words about the premise of the novel?
I can tell you a little bit about where it came from. I started writing Empire Falls when my daughters, particularly my younger daughter, Kate, was coming to that point in her young life, and my older daughter, Emily's life too, when they were both beginning to have private lives, which of course was exactly what Barbara and I wanted for them. You want that for a kid to have an inner life, a private life. We're all entitled to that, aren't we? That part of us that not everybody necessarily sees. But the flip side of that, as any of you, all of you who are parents in here knows, is that when you realize that a child of yours who you love more than life itself does have an inner life, that also means that there may be circumstances which you are no longer able to protect them. Empire Falls was a novel that was written in pure dread, because one of the things that I knew was that there was going to be a school shooting. And the character, Miles's beloved daughter, Tick, in the novel, Tick, I drew from both of my daughters for that portrait. And I'm becoming a little verklempt here, just putting myself back in that situation again, but I didn't know until I wrote the shooting scene whether a character that I had based on my daughters was going to live. Only when I wrote the scene did I. So, you know, everybody, you would think, here's the book that won the Pulitzer Prize, and it was turned into that wonderful Netflix, or not Netflix, what was it?
Amazon?
Yeah. It was turned into that wonderful production. And you would think, you know, here's Russo. He won the big prize for this, and it was filmed so gorgeously, and he must have wonderful memories of this book. I mean, how many writers can be so fortunate as I was with that novel? And when I think back on it, it is all I remember is the dread of because I mean that happens towards the end of a fairly long book. Right. So, but yeah, and that happens with me a lot with my novels. I don't remember the novels. If I haven't been asked to write a screenplay, I probably haven't read it since it came out. Yeah. And you know, when I look back at them, what I tend to remember is less the novel itself than who I was when I wrote it.
Right. It's like a moment in time for you.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I love the most about your novels is how you write about love so beautifully and all of its forms, and I can see your inspiration. Yeah. The way you write about Miles and his daughter, right. Miles and his brother, Miles and his former mother-in-law who owns the bar across the street. Right. How do these characters come to you? Do they come to you whole, or is it a process for you to write each of them?
Well, it's more of a process. I generally know something about the characters. One of the things I know about them is that I don't like to spend a lot of my time with boring people in the real world. So one of the things that I know about them is that, or suspect about them, is that they're going to entertain me for the next 4 years. Nice. So there's that. But beyond that, what I love the most about them, a couple of things that I love about these characters, is that for the amount of time that I'm writing the book, they become more important to me than me. Mm-hmm. I get to spend this time with these people who continue to surprise me over sometimes 3 or 4, or in the case of Bridge of Sighs, probably 5 years that it took to write that book. But they become very important. They allow me to forget about Rick Russo, which is wonderful. Yeah, that's what they.
It's like getting to know a friend.
A lot about art is, I think, getting over yourself and getting out of your own way. And when you create characters who entertain you, that's one of the best things about them is that they become more important to you than you, at least for a period of time, and that's wonderful.
Yeah. You have been called the, quote, patron saint of small-town fiction. Mm-hmm. How much of this is drawn from your experience growing up in Gloversville? Of this novel is drawn from your experience?
All of it? Yeah, I grew up in a forgotten, we're using that term a lot now, a forgotten part of the world. Gloversville, New York. It was a mill town. My grandfather was a glove cutter. And it was a place that I absolutely loved. My family was there, my grandparents, including my glove cutter grandfather, all the people that I loved the most in the world were there. My mother, after my parents separated, my father was still in town, but I never saw him. He wouldn't. Every now and then, when my mother and I were walking in downtown Gloversville, I would look across the street in front of the pool hall, and there's my old man. You know, he lived right in the same town, but after he and my mother split up, I just almost never saw him. I never really spent much time with him until I was old enough to occupy the bar stool next to his. Then we got to know each other real well. But my mother absolutely hated Gloversville. And I think she thought her greatest gift to me would be to get me the hell out of there. Which was why she encouraged me to apply all the way across country to the University of Arizona, because that was her escape plan. I don't think she wanted me to be a writer. As a matter of fact, she told me when I finally decided that that's what I wanted to do. It wasn't her idea. She didn't want me to do that at all. She wanted me to become an English professor, which I was for a time. I did a PhD, and I was a professor of American literature before I began to write, or about the same time I was beginning to write. And she thought of getting me out of Gloversville and becoming an academic, a professor. To her, that was like entering the witness protection program. I would learn a new language, and when people heard me speak, they would have no idea of where I came from. And I think one of the great disappointments in my mother's life, because she was right about so many things that my father was wrong about. She was right to believe in education. She thought that as a result of my becoming educated, that my life would be so much better than hers, so much better than my father's as well. And she was right. Her belief in education was absolutely foundational. But I think the greatest disappointment of her life was, I mean, why, if you've done that, why would anybody who has entered the witness protection program and learned a new language, why would you then turn around and tell everybody exactly where you came from? Which of course is what I did with all of my early novels, with almost all of my novels. They're all set in some form, way, shape, or form. I mean, Gloversville is there in Mohawk. It's there in North Bath in the Fool novels. It's there in Thomaston in Bridge of Sighs. I think that my mother was I won't say she was disappointed. She could not have been more proud of me, of the writer that I became. But I think it was difficult for her to understand just how important this town that she so desperately wanted to escape from would always be for me. That I would probably always return there with love.
Yeah. Well, when you're reading your novels, the town is a character in the
Sure.
novel, and I felt like I was checking in for a shift at the Empire Falls Diner when I picked it up. It was unbelievable, the experience of reading it.
Well, I mean, all writers tend to look at the world through a certain lens, or a couple of lenses. Depending on who you are, what your lived experiences are like, you might, the defining lens of your fiction could be race, it could be gender, it could be. I mean, and these are all valid lenses. The two lenses that I always, that I have always seen the world through, for better or for worse, you tell me. I'm not the one that gets to judge that. But the two lenses that I've always looked at the world through and interpreted the world through are place and class. The place we've already talked about, of course, this place that I keep returning to. But also class. I am just, and especially, it's especially important in places like the place that I grew up in, because if you live in a town like Empire Falls or my Gloversville or the various towns that I've written about, the thing that's so interesting about those towns, because they're small, right? Because if I am the patron saint of small towns, they're small, but one of the things that guarantees is that the richest person in town, like Mrs. Whiting in Empire Falls, is going to cross paths with the poorest people in these towns.
Yeah.
Well, what a fascinating crucible to look at the world through. What a wonderful lens to look at the world through. At least if you're Richard Russo, as I've grown older, I have delved with some of my more recent novels. I have delved into, I have used other lenses, probably sparingly, but I have used other lenses because my own lived experience has deepened over that time. I've had, as I have moved about the world, because I don't live in Gloversville anymore. I live in coastal Maine now, and so my lived experience has changed. The kind of people that I hang around, of course, has changed. I'm accused of being an elitist these days. Can you imagine that? So yeah, I mean as your lived experience changes, so does the way that you understand the world that you live in.
Yeah, there's a struggle in this novel. There's a struggle in a lot of your novels with the characters. They have this internal struggle. And Miles, the protagonist, he's left college early to go home and care for his ailing mother and makes the decision to stay in Empire Falls. And a lot of people could say that, well, he's sort of giving up and he's just staying at home, but it seems to Miles that it's a choice. So do you see him as more of a tragic figure or as someone who's made this decision to live this life and live it happily?
I just love the guy.
Yeah, I know. So do I. So do I.
And I love him. I love him for his decency. I love him for the way he loves his daughter. Yeah. And even as he's making, sometimes you want to throttle him. You want to reach right out and throttle him. You want to say, "Can't you see what you're doing here?" But I love him. I love him and admire him in all of these. I mean, please keep me the hell away from perfect characters, perfect human beings. They're just so dull, And Miles is the kind of character. Miles is the kind of man, the kind of character that I can lose myself with. I'm sure that book took me a good between 3 and 4 years to write.
Yeah, it's amazing. We were chatting before about the difference in writing a screenplay versus this. Which do you prefer?
Well, I mean, I'm a novelist,
Yes.
but I do write for the screen, or at least I used to before Hollywood slit its own throat a couple of years ago. What I like about screenwriting is that it plays to my strengths. because screenwriting is mostly dialogue. You don't spend a lot of time describing the world in a screenplay because they're going to shoot it with the house that is available, in the place that is available. Right. And so you don't spend a lot of time describing. I have trouble describing. Why? Because my ear is just so much better than my eye. It was one of the things that I absolutely loved working with Robert Benton, the great director that I worked with on several films and who was a dear friend of mine and who just died a little over a year ago. Our working together was, I think, the kind of marriage of his eye and my ear. What he did before he became a movie director was he was the director of photography, I think for Esquire maybe, or something like that. And he would storyboard everything. And when he was writing his screenplays, he would go to great lengths, describing things for himself as much as anybody else, because his eye was just unmatched. I, on the other hand, when my wife and I go places, and we're talking about it later, this place that we went to a restaurant in Venice, or we went to this place or that place, Barbara can still describe it. And when we go back, sure enough, she's just remembered the whole thing. I, on the other hand, will remember what somebody said at the next table. Yes. Because that's where I learn about people. I learn so much more about my characters by just listening to them talk. I'm going to learn everything I need to know about them by just listening to them talk. So when you say what do you like more, novel writing or screenwriting? I like screenwriting because it's just so damn much easier. I get to do the thing that comes naturally to me, and the thing that doesn't come naturally to me, I get to forget about at least a little bit, which is why if I take time to write, as I did, the miniseries for Empire Falls, that was wonderful. But boy, when I went back to write a novel again after that, there were just a whole bunch of tools in my toolbox that I hadn't used in years. and it was suddenly I had to do the things that give me more pause, the things that I know I'm not quite as good at. And my first drafts in my novels are often so dialogue heavy that after I've written that first draft and I type it up and I print it out, I just have to say to myself, Rick, slow down. See something, for Christ's sake, even if it's wrong. But slow down and see something, because ultimately your reader's going to want to see it. But for me, that's the difficult part of this process.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about a day in the life of Rick Russo? You're reading, you're writing. What is a normal day for you if you're working on a novel, which you always are?
Well, this is always an embarrassing question. The answer is always embarrassing. A good day for me is 2 pages, right? How long does that take for me to write 2 good pages? Or 2 good, I mean, you'll continue to revise them throughout the book, of course, but 2 pages where things are more or less working. How long, and if you write 2 pages a day, most people who aren't writers don't realize this, but if you write 2 pages a day and just watch them stack up on the desk, at the end of the year, you will have something the size of a book. It won't be a book. But it will be the size of a book. And so if 2 good pages is what I do, how long does that take? Well, typically, I'll get a page or a page and a half in the morning, in a session that might take me an hour and a half, maybe 2. And I still love the feeling of pen and paper. So my first draft is always longhand. And so my pages in the morning that I may have spent an hour and a half or 2 hours on get put on the computer in the afternoon. And they're usually a little bit longer because in the meantime, I've thought of some things that I've left out, and you add those. So maybe if you've got a page and a half in the morning, by the time it goes onto the computer, now you've got 2 pages. And in the afternoon, that probably takes a little bit less than it did in the morning. So if you sat at your desk and worked for an hour and a half in the morning, and then maybe another hour or hour and a half in the early afternoon. You see why I'm going here? Why it's embarrassing? That's my work day. Although
there's a lot of research in between, though.
It's my work day, depending how you define writing. We were talking about this earlier. Usually, after my morning session, one of the things that I like to do is I walk 3 miles a day, every day. And I learned that from various writing teachers. And they would ask you if your writing isn't going very well, are you walking enough? Because walking, there's some sort of chemistry there, I think, between walking and writing. So I always go out for a 3-mile walk. And I don't do it with the idea of thinking about what I wrote in the morning. If anything, I'd like to clear my mind, clear my palate. And so I go out for a 3-mile walk. But it's a rare day that I don't come back from that walk and hurried back to my desk and with scribbles about what I might write tomorrow, right? So is that writing? When I'm walking and come back with an idea and you write it down, is that part of my work day? I'd like to think so, because now my work day is a little bit longer, right? Also, by 2 in the afternoon, I'm pretty much done with my work. I'm not going to write anymore after that. But I will be reading for the rest of the afternoon. And is reading writing? Well, again, depends on your definition. But I think of it as part of my writing day because, I mean, like every writer, you read with larceny in your heart. And it's not because you're going to take a passage or a chapter. You're not going to steal. You're not going to steal in that sense. But when you read a chapter of a book that really knocks you sideways, one of the things you're going to say to yourself is, ooh, this worked. I wonder if this technique, what I saw this writer do, what she did, would there be some way in which that could, where I want to remember that because I might be able to use this technique. So if reading is writing, and if writers are always looking for something that they might be able to make use of, that makes my day longer. That makes my writing day longer still. And it works. We were talking about, earlier, Chrissy and I were talking about the fact that writers will triage certain things. There's certain things that when you read a book that you love, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful novel. You admire the writer. You admire the writer so much, but you also realize that it's a writer who's not. This writer, despite whoever it is, their brilliance, there's probably nothing in this writer's work that is going to be of use for you, and you triage it over here. But on the other hand, there are some things that you think to yourself, ooh, remember that. Remember that. You might be able to use that. And what I was telling Chrissy earlier is that I was my first academic job out of graduate school. My first academic job was at a 2-year branch campus of Penn State University in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Anybody here ever been to Altoona? Oh, Well, good, wonderful. Y'all look like you're doing okay. But I was walking around the campus duck pond, duck guano all over the place, with the director of faculty. His name was Kel Melling. And it was the middle of August, and he was waiting for the state legislature to give him his budget so he could hire all his adjuncts. Because the adjuncts, God love them, they need to know if they're going to have a job or not. And he wanted to tell them, yes, I'm going to be able to pay you, but he said, I can't do that until I have the budget in my hand, until I know how much it is. How many classes can I offer them? I don't know. I know they'd like to probably get as many as they can. They're probably working at that university and 2 or 3 others. But every year it's the same thing, Kel said. I mean, every year I can't give my adjuncts the assurance that they will have a job. He said, what the hell can I do? What the hell can I do? We're walking along the duck pond there. There are ducks all over the place. He says, what am I going to do? Threaten to kill a duck a day until they give him my budget? Well, you can see where that got triaged, right? That's exactly what William Henry Devereaux Jr. says in Straight Man. He grabs that. I think it's a goose, actually. He calls it a duck, but he grabs that and says and threatens to kill a duck a day until he gets what he wants. So you see, and if you define writing that way, there's really never a time when I'm not working, is there?
Yes. I wanted to, I mean, we could chat for hours, you and I. Thank you for listening, everyone. But I did just finish Bridge of Sighs, and I'd be remiss if we didn't chat about it for a few minutes.
Sure.
This novel was so beautiful, but maybe you could tell us quickly the premise, and then I have 1 or 2 questions I need to ask.
Sure. Yeah, Bridge of Sighs was one of those books that I didn't read. There was never any film interest in it. And because of that, after the book got written, I didn't think about it again until I got that call from Oprah, where she was interested. She was interested in it. But I hadn't read the book, and when I went back and reread it, I knew I had to reread it because I couldn't really remember very much about it. And I knew I was going to have to if I was going to talk to Oprah about it. I thought I'd at least try to remember the plot and a little something about it, the character's name. So I did. I needed to be able to pass the quiz because I knew that was what. So anyway, I went back and reread the book, and it was fun because I had not thought about the book since it was published. And it's kind of fun if you're a writer going back and reading something like a book like A Bridge of Sighs all those years, like 20 years after the book is published. You go back and you can read it almost like as if you're a stranger, you know. And I remember reading parts of that book and thinking, oh, that's pretty good, as if I didn't have anything, as if I didn't really have anything to do with its authorship. The other thing that I remember about that book was that it's the longest of my novels, and I do remember that it gave me absolute fits. I remember going because the thing that was killing me was that I had 3 characters in it who were of pretty much equal importance. There's Lucy, and I knew he was going to be absolutely central to the book. But then there's Bobby Marconi, who seems very important too, and he becomes more important in the book because he turns out to be the famous painter Robert Noonan, who spends all of his adult life in Venice painting. And we're going to see some of his paintings during the course of the novel. And then, of course, there's Sarah, the girl that loves them both, the girl that they are both in love with. And I knew that she was going to be important too. And I remember being like 300 pages into the book and had managed to convince myself that I was working on 3 novels. And I gave it to my agent, and he wrote back and said no, it's one book. You have to meddle with, we're going to learn certain things from certain people and other things from other people, and you're going to have to fiddle with the timeline a little bit. But no, it is one book. And I remember talking with Nat, my agent, and I had like a 30-minute or maybe 45-minute conversation with him where I tried to explain to him that what he wanted me to do couldn't be done. And by the end of that 45 minutes, I realized that it could be, and it was the only way the book was ever going to get written. There was never going to be a trilogy of those books, which is what I thought I was writing during those first horrible 300 pages.
Right. So I had read that book was a real struggle for you. So is that why? Because you thought it was 3 books and ended up being the one.
Yeah, that was. Once I got it through my head that my agent was right and I was wrong, then the path the clutter began to clear up a little bit.
And how do you keep the story straight when you're jumping back and forth in time so much in that book? Like, how did you keep it straight?
Yeah. Well, you don't always. One of the things that you discover, you may hear, if you go to Ann Patchett's reading tonight, you may hear Ann say something. We've talked about this a lot, Ann and I have, over the years. One of the things that happens to both of us is that we'll begin a book, and you'll get to about 75 pages or maybe 125 pages, and a character will say something, and you say to yourself, oh, shit. This belongs on the first page. All right. Oh. If it belongs on the first page, that means you have to go back and start again. Oh. So you do. You go back and you start again. And this time, instead of hitting that wall at 125 pages, maybe you get to 225 pages, and a different character says something where you say to yourself, yes, again. And you know that belongs on page 1. Or maybe it's not what the character said. Maybe a character that you didn't anticipate being in the book suddenly is there and needs to be there from the start. All right, back you go. So when you say, how do you keep it straight? You often don't until you go back and reread what you've written. The good thing is that happens most in the first third of the book. It happens less in the second third of the book. And in the final third of the book, it doesn't happen that much. Because by then, you've walked through so many narrative doors, and those doors have closed behind you. You can't go back out through them again, right? Those doors have closed. So by the time you get to people will say, how many drafts did you do of the book? Well, which third are we talking about? The first third gets a lot of drafts. The second third doesn't get nearly as many. And the third, I've had books where the third draft was, it was just finished. It was there.
Gosh, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Sarah was one of my favorite characters, and she asked herself in the end, was it more important to love or be loved? And I don't know, that has stuck with me. Do you feel, the characters feel like maybe they're not worthy of both?
And it's interesting you ask me that question because I don't remember how I resolved it in the book, and I suspect it's because I didn't resolve it.
Might not be resolvable.
Because even as you ask it to me now, I don't know the answer. I think both loving and being loved are terribly important. I think for myself as a writer, but also as a father and a husband, loving is I can't imagine anything more important. But the wonderful thing is, at least much of the time, is that if you can give that love when it's needed, funny, but it does have a way of coming around and coming back to you. I mean, many of you have children, you know how that works, right? Whatever you give them, and this is probably going to sound at least a little bit weird, but I'll say it anyway because it's true, or at least I think it's true. Art, which includes writing or filmmaking or any kind of painting, whatever you do, art can be very selfish. It often is. Let's put it that way. It is very selfish. And if you're an artist, one of the things you have to come to terms with is the fact that your art will often come first. When you finish with that vital part of your day, or you interrupt that vital part of your day to attend to the business of being a father or being a husband, and doing the things that you need to do as a human being, as opposed to just as an artist. One of the things about that is that over time, the selfishness of art itself and the selfishness that you have to be sometimes as an artist is something that ultimately you do come to terms with, because you have to. If you don't, you just keep making the same mistakes over and over. And so again, that sounds, well, those of you who are artists, you kind of know what I mean about that, right? The attention that it demands of you can be perilous at times.
Amy, do we have time for one or two questions? Are we about, what's that? One question. Who's the lucky winner?
Yeah, no, make it a good one.
Yes, right here. Oh, hold on one second.
Tell us about the new book that's coming out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got a new book coming out in August.
Yes, it's right here.
It's called Under the Falls, and in some respects, you may think of it as new terrain for me because it's a thriller of sorts. But you will also recognize that it's very much a Richard Russo novel. It takes place up there in that territory that you know so well if you've been reading my books all these years in upstate New York. And it involves, I'll tell you just this much, it involves a singer-songwriter, somebody who has become very famous and who lives in Nashville. I kind of modeled him on Jason Isbell a little bit because he's such a great, great singer-songwriter. But the premise of the book is that my character, Tyler, has left this left-behind outpost in upstate New York with nothing but his guitar in hand when he is 18 years old, and he's gone to Nashville, and he's become famous. And now, this takes place right after the pandemic, and right after the pandemic, the band's manager, without consulting Tyler, says that he's booked some, they haven't been on the road, so they want to work out some kinks, and he's booked Tyler back in the place where he came from and to which he has never returned in 20-some years. And lo and behold, when he gets back there, he discovers that not everybody is a Tyler Sinclair fan. I'll tell you, that's a good place to stop.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for coming.